Hey everyone, this is a piece from this collection of essays or pieces or materials, primary source documents from the libertarian socialist tradition. It's a 4-volume thing. I only have the second and third volumes, but it's titled A Libertarian Reader. And this volume's volume 2, Fighting for Freedom, 1897 to 1936. The back blurb says, libertarian was first coined in 1857 to summarize opposition to the authoritarian relations generated by the state, capitalism, and patriarchy, and the desire to end them. This anthology brings together libertarian writings from the next 160 years, all united by a love of freedom and seeking to change the world to allow every individual to flourish. Articles by thinkers and activists from all libertarian schools are included. Anarchists, council communists, situationists, autonomists, guild socialists, and revolutionary syndicalists raised their voice in fighting for freedom. These writings will aid today's struggles against every hierarchy, whether political, economic, or social, and bring a free socialist society closer. The piece that I'm going to read today is titled Report from Moscow by Otto Rühle, the council communist. Although I'm sure this is probably prior to council communism becoming a distinct tradition. Let's see, what page did we go into? 238. Okay. Report from Moscow by Otto Rühle. It's from September 1920. This translation is unknown. Who translated this is unknown, but this piece is from the Marxist Internet Archive. This is a little introduction by the editor, who is Ian MacKay, not to be confused with Ian Mackay of Minor Threat and Fugazi fame. Says, like many left Marxists disillusioned with social democracy's support of the imperialist slaughter of the First World War, Rühle welcomed the Russian Revolution and embraced the potential of workers' councils. Like others, Rühle was initially sympathetic to the Bolsheviks, but this changed with his visit to Russia for the Second Congress of the Communist International. Rühle reiterated his position that, quote, the revolution is not a party affair, end quote, and rejected party communism for council communism. Okay, that's the end of the introduction by Ian MacKay. Section 1. I traveled illegally to Russia. The business was difficult and dangerous, but it succeeded. On the 16th of June, I stepped onto Russian soil. On the 19th, I was in Moscow. The departure from Germany went hastily. In April, upon invitation from Moscow, the Communist Workers' Party of Germany had sent 2 comrades as negotiators to the executive to advise upon the KAPD's joining of the Third International. That's supposed to be advised? I don't know. There's a footnote here. The Kommunistische Arbeiterpartei Deutschlands, Communist Workers' Party of Germany, was a left-wing communist party which rejected both parliamentarism and working in trade unions in favor of building revolutionary industrial unions and workers' councils. They were the majority of the newly formed Communist Party of Germany before being expelled. And footnote. It was being said that the 2 comrades had been arrested in Estonia on the return journey. The necessity was to immediately recommence the negotiations and to bring them to completion, and if possible, to send back a report to the Communist Workers' Party of Germany so that information from the Communist Workers' Party of Germany could be received before the start of the Congress. all in the greatest rush in that the Congress should already begin on the 15th of June. Having arrived in Russia, I found out to my joy that the news about the arrest of our comrades had been incorrect. They had traveled back via Murmansk, and so were already in Norway on the way to Germany. I also learned that the Congress was not to begin on the 15th of June, but only on the 15th of July. What I further constituted was less pleasing. My first conversation with Radek was a real argument, hours long, partly highly vehement. Every sentence of Radek was a sentence out of the, quote, red flag, end quote. Every argument a Spartacist argument. Radek is, after all, lord and master of the Communist Workers' Party of Germany. Dr. Levi and consorts are his willing parrots. They have no opinions of their own and are paid by Moscow. I don't think Radek was in the KAPD. I think it's the KPD. I think there's a typo here. Doesn't make sense. Footnote. Karl Bernardovich Radek lived from 1885 to 1939 and was a Marxist active in the Polish and German social democratic movements before World War I and a leading communist after the Russian Revolution. He took part in the discussions and conferences leading to the foundation of the Communist Party of Germany, and on Radek's return to Russia, Radek became the secretary of the Communist International, taking the main responsibility for German issues. Paul Levi, who lived from 1883 to 1930, was a German communist and social democratic political leader, then head of the KPD following the assassination of Rosa Luxemburg and Karl Liebknecht in 1919. The Spartacus League, Spartacus Bund, was a Marxist revolutionary movement organized in Germany during World War I and active during the Revolution of 1918. It was named after Spartacus, leader of the largest slave rebellion of the Roman Republic, and was founded by Liebknecht and Luxemburg, amongst others. It became the Communist Party of Germany in January 1919, joining the Communist International later in 1919. End footnote. I asked Radek to hand over to me the open letter to the KAPD. Radek promised me it but didn't keep his word. I reminded him of it repeatedly still and others to remind him but didn't receive it. When I later heard that the two comrades who'd been acting as negotiators had only received the open letter only at the very last moment before their departure, the psychology of Radek's behavior became clear to me. Radek, the wiliest of the wily, and the most unscrupulous of the unscrupulous, considering the perfidious lies and insolences which absolutely abounded in the open letter, felt of course something so like shame that he shied away from having to account for himself eye to eye with the insulted and libeled. I think Karl Radek becomes part of the Trotskyist left opposition. Back to the text. The methods which I saw practiced on me in Moscow aroused my strongest aversions. Whereto I saw political, quote, scene shifting, end quote, calculated as bluff, using flashy revolutionary resolutions to conceal the opportunistic background. Best of all, I'd have gone up and gone away again. However, I decided to stay until the second delegate, Comrade Mergus, Braunschweig, would arrive. I used the time to make studies. First, I looked around Moscow, mostly without official guidance, so as to also see that which wasn't decreed to be for viewing. Then I made a long car tour to Kashira and a trip to Nizhny Novgorod, Kazan-Simbirsk, Samara, Saratov, Tambov, Tula, etc., thus getting to know the most important places in central Russia. That provided an abundance of impressions more unpleasant than pleasant. Russia was suffering in all its limbs from every disease, but how could it have been any different? Lots was being reported, but the example of Crispien, Crispien, and Dittmann didn't tempt me to follow suit. Whose interests would be served then? Only the opponents of communism. All these shortcomings and drawbacks aren't, of course, any evidence against communism. At the most, against the methods and tactics employed by Russia to realize communism. Section 2. The Russian tactic is that of authoritarian organization. It has been so consistently developed and in the end carried to extremes by the Bolsheviks to the fundamental principle of centralism that it has led to over-centralism. The Bolsheviks didn't do that out of wantonness or desire to experiment. The revolution forced them to it. If today the representatives of German party organizations are filled with indignation and cross themselves over the dictatorial and terroristic phenomena in Russia, it is easy for them to talk. Were they in the position of the Russian government, they'd have to act exactly so. Centralism is the organizational principle of the bourgeois capitalist age. With it, the bourgeois state and the capitalist economy can be built up. Not, however, the proletarian state and the socialist economy. They demand the council system. For the Communist Workers' Party of Germany, the KAPD, contrary to Moscow, the revolution is no party matter. The party, no authoritarian organization from the top down. The leader, no military chief. The masses, no army condemned to blind obedience. The dictatorship, no despotism of a ruling clique. Communism, no springboard for the rise of a new Soviet bourgeoisie. For the KAPD, the revolution is the business of the whole proletarian class, within which the Communist Party forms only the most mature and determined vanguard. The rise and development of the masses to political maturity, this vanguard doesn't await the tutelage of the leadership, discipline, and regulation. On the contrary, these methods produce an advanced proletariat such as the German exactly the opposite result. They strangle initiatives, paralyze the revolutionary activity, impair the combativeness, reduce the personal feeling of responsibility. What counts is to trigger the initiative of the masses, to free the masses from authority, to develop the masses' self-confidence, to train the masses in self-activity, and thereby to raise the masses' interest in the revolution. Every fighter must know and feel why he is fighting, what he is fighting for. Everyone must become in his consciousness a living bearer of the revolutionary struggle and creative member of the communist buildup. The necessary freedom, therefore, will, however, never be won in the coercive system of centralism, the chains of bureaucratic militaristic control under the burden of a leader dictatorship and its inevitable accompaniments, arbitrariness, personality cult, authority, corruption, violence. Therefore, transformation of the party conception into a federative community conception on the line of councilist ideas. Therefore, supersession of external commitments and compulsion through internal readiness and willingness. Therefore, elevation of communism from the demagogic prattle of the paper cliché to the height of one of the most internally captivating and fulfilling experiences of the whole world. The Communist Workers' Party of Germany came to these of its conclusions through the simple realization of the very obvious circumstances that every country and every people, because they have their own particular economy, social structure, traditions, maturity of the proletariat, i.e. their own particular revolutionary requirements and conditions, must also have their own revolutionary laws, methods, rhythm of development, and outward appearances. Russia isn't Germany. Russian politics aren't German politics. Russian revolution isn't German revolution. Lenin might demonstrate hundreds of times that the tactics of the Bolsheviks were a brilliant success in the Russian Revolution. They wouldn't by a long way be the right tactics for the German Revolution. Every attempt to force us to adopt these tactics must provoke the most decisive opposition. Footnote. A reference to Lenin's arguments in Left-Wing Communism and Infantile Disorder, written especially for the Second Congress of the Communist International against the Council Communists. Rühle is summarizing the main arguments raised against Lenin by the Council Communists, as explained in detail by Herman Gorter in his 1920 reply, Open Letter to Comrade Lenin. End footnote. Moscow is making this terroristic attempt. It wants to elevate its principles to the principles of world revolution. The Communist Party of Germany is its agent. Footnote. Kommunistische Partei Deutschlands, Communist Party of Germany, end footnote. It works on Russian orders and the Russian model, is Moscow's gramophone. Because the Communist Workers' Party of Germany doesn't play along in this eunuch role, the Communist Workers' Party of Germany is persecuted with deadly hate. One reads only the most insulting aspersions, the poisonous libels and accusations with which one fights us without hindsight of the revolutionary situation in which we stand and of the effect which this vile practice triggers in our bourgeois opponents. Dr. Levy, and Heckert must fling at us every piece of rubbish that Radek and Zinoviev press into their hands. Footnote. Grigory Yevseyevich Zinoviev, who lived from 1883 to 1936, was a leading Bolshevik and chairman of the Executive Committee of the Communist International and was created in March 1919. Fritz Heckert lived from 1884 to 1936 and was a co-founder of the Spartacus League and the Communist Party of Germany before becoming a leading member of the Communist International. End footnote. That's what those boys are paid for. However, because the Communist Workers' Party of Germany doesn't give in, nevertheless, the Communist Workers' Party of Germany ought to be censored by the Congress of the Third International to comply to Moscow's power of command. It was all exactly prepared. The guillotine was set up. Radek smugly tested the sharpness of the blade, and already the High Court was sitting. It should have been a grand scene, too beautiful to be accomplished. Section 3. As I returned from the Volga, Comrade Mergus had arrived in Moscow. On the same day, a sitting of the executive of the Third International took place. We weren't invited. In our absence, the motion of Mayor, KPD, Communist Party of Germany, that we should be refused admission to the Congress was discussed. The motion was rejected. On this, they called us to the sitting and were so gracious as to grant us advisory status at the Congress. At this meeting, we got to see the discussion guidelines which were to be laid before the Congress. They were intended to be the basis for the decisions of the Congress, of which in his boastful manner Radek had already said to me earlier that he had it in the pocket, quote, in the pocket, end quote. The discussion guidelines, weren't these not old familiars? Indeed. We recognized in them the notorious Heidelberg theses repeated. They were only somewhat more elaborately set out, somewhat theoretically doctored, somewhat enhanced in, quote, centralist dictatorial, end quote. They were made into theses of Russian power politics out of theses of Spartacist division politics and should now become theses of international violation by Russian methods. We sacrificed a night to their study and knew in the morning what we had to do. We went to Radek and put to him the question of if in the open letter, which still hadn't been given to us, the demanded expulsions of Laufenberg, Wolfheim, and Rühle was an ultimatum, and if the executive insisted upon the fulfillment of these demands before the Communist Workers' Party of Germany would be admitted to the Third International. Footnote. Fritz Wolfheim, who lived from 1888 to 1942, and Heinrich Laufenberg, 1872 to 1932, were both social democrats before the war, before moving towards communism, both attended the founding conference of the Communist Workers' Party of Germany, and were later expelled for advocating, quote, national Bolshevism, end quote. End footnote. Radek tried miscellaneous evasions, but we demanded a plain answer. Then Radek explained it would satisfy the executive if the Communist Workers' Party of Germany promised that the Communist Workers' Party of Germany would, at a later date, at a suitable opportunity, free themselves of Laufenberg and Wolfheim. Of my expulsion, there wasn't any more question. This remarkable yielding to demands which had been raised with the truest ring of conviction as conditio sine qua non made us suspicious. Now we demanded to know which demands of the executive concerning the admission of the Communist Workers' Party of Germany into the Third International were definitive. Radek explained. You must, in the name of your party at the beginning of the Congress, give the declaration that the Communist Workers' Party of Germany will abide by all decisions. Then you'll receive voting status at Congress. Then nothing will stand in the way of your admission into the Third International. We were hearing right. In advance, most solemnly declare that we wish to submit to the Congress decisions, which we didn't even know. Was that supposed to be one of Radek's jokes? No, it was serious. Now, if the Congress were to decide upon the dissolution of the Communist Workers' Party of Germany, ... joking apart, he did indeed have that intention. Thereby Radek was unmasked. What was in the theses then? Now. 1. The Communists are duty-bound to set themselves up in rigid centralist, iron-hard, militaristic dictatorial organizations. Footnote. This was meant literally, as Zinoviev explained at the Congress. Quote, today people like Kautsky come along and say that in Russia you do not have the dictatorship of the working class, but the dictatorship of the party. They think this is a reproach against us, not in the least. We have a dictatorship of the working class, and that is precisely why we also have a dictatorship of the Communist Party. The dictatorship of the Communist Party is only a function and attribute and expression of the dictatorship of the working class, ... The dictatorship of the proletariat is at the same time the dictatorship of the Communist Party, end quote. That's from Workers of the World and Oppressed People Unite, Proceedings and Documents of the Second Congress of the Communist International, 1920, Volume 1, published by Pathfinder in 1991. Pages 151 to 52. Also see a similar extract from a Zinoviev article quoted by Oscar Anweiler, the Soviets, the Russian Workers, Peasants, and Soldiers' Councils. End footnote. 2. The Communists are duty-bound to take part in parliamentary elections and to enter Parliament to carry out a new type of revolutionary parliamentary work there. 3. The Communists are duty-bound to remain in the trade unions so as to help the revolution to victory in these revolutionarily transformable institutions. 4. Each of the parties that are members of the Third International is to call itself the Communist Party. Subsequently, the Communist Workers' Party of Germany has to sacrifice its continuing independence and dissolve itself into the Communist Party of Germany. Thus, joking apart, the Congress actually should pronounce the death sentence upon the KAPD, and we, the KAPD delegates, Communist Workers' Party of Germany delegates, should receive voting status, i.e. we should be able to help pronounce the death sentence if we were to declare prior that the KAPD wanted to submit to the pronounced death sentence without resistance. Could there be a greater political comedy, or a greater perfidy? We laughed in Radek's face and asked if he was mad. A party that, on the grounds of the Heidelberg Theses, had split from the KPD, had constituted itself on a new basis, had given itself organizationally a new structure, tactically a new orientation, and theoretically a new program, that vigorously stood on its own 2 feet, concentrated in itself all the active forces of the German Revolution, and in size of membership is far superior to the Communist Party of Germany. Such a party may refuse, even once to enter into a discussion on the discussion of its right to exist. As a child can never return to its mother's womb, likewise the Communist Workers' Party of Germany doesn't return to the Communist Party of Germany. Even one word of discussion about this is mischief, is absurdity, is a political childishness. We left Radek standing so, with the hangman's rope that he had intended to put around the neck of the Communist Workers' Party of Germany, and went on our way. We felt no desire to give ourselves further headaches in this atmosphere of political trickery and cheating, of diplomatic stage management and opportunistic string-pulling, of lack of moral restraint and cold grinning cunning. Inside ourselves we had nothing at all to look for in a Congress which met so far from all communism. Therefore we declared, quote, we decide with thanks participation in the Congress. We decided to travel home, to recommend to the Communist Workers' Party of Germany a wait-and-see attitude until a truly revolutionary international has come into being, which it can join. Adios. Section 4. Our decision had a surprising effect. If until then we were treated like spoiled children whose misdeeds caused the poor parents anxiety and vexation, and should be put across the knee and given a good hiding. So they now suddenly started to come round. The threateningly swung whip disappeared behind the mirror, and the carrot was brought out of the drawer. They began to woo us with brotherly words, such as should be customary between communists, and with the appearance of goodwill towards objective communication. Even Radek took on manners. Radek negotiated reasonably and railed against the Communist Party of Germany, who Radek called, quote, a lazy and cowardly pig, quote, a lazy and cowardly gang, end quote, who he would make, quote, wet their pants, etc., end quote. Wet their pants, end quote, etc. We had prolonged and thorough discussions with him, Zinoviev, Bukharin, and at the last moment even a determined discussion with Lenin. The great respect and high admiration that we have for him, and that through this discussion we raised even further, did not prevent us telling him in a totally German manner our opinions. We explained to him that we felt it a scandal and a crime against the German Revolution. That in a time when hundreds of brochures had to be written opposing opportunism, he found the time and felt occasion to write a brochure exactly against the Communist Workers' Party of Germany, the active and most consistent party of the German Revolution, which now, like his other writings of recent times, was being used by the entire counter-revolution as an arsenal, not to correct our supposedly wrong tactics in the interest of the revolution, but to knock dead every stirring activity of the masses with arguments and quotes from Lenin. We demonstrated to him that he is completely misinformed about conditions in Germany, that his arguments for the revolutionary exploitation of the parliament and the trade unions only have a laughable effect. We finally left him without the slightest doubt that the Communist Workers' Party of Germany, as it refuses any material help from Moscow, also with complete determination won't stand for any interference from Moscow in its politics. The discussions left in us the feeling that the Russian comrades had begun to appreciate what a mistake it had been to go too far. That in the end the International, i.e. in the first line Russia, needed the Communist Workers' Party of Germany more than vice versa. The Communist Workers' Party of Germany, the International. So for them, our decision was most unpleasant, and they sought a compromise. As we were in Petrograd on the way home, the executive sent after us another invitation to the Congress with the statement that the Communist Workers' Party of Germany, although it hadn't complied with or promised to comply with a single one of the draconian conditions of the open letter, had been allowed the right to the voting status at the Congress. Too crude a bait. Fundamentally, it was, of course, a matter of complete indifference whether the Communist Workers' Party of Germany assisted at its proposed execution in Moscow with advisory or voting status. So we gave our thanks once more and traveled to Germany. The outcome of the Congress had justified our tactics. The decisions taken on the question of concern to us, building the party, parliamentarianism, trade union politics, reveal the most unconcealed opportunism. There are decisions on the line of the right wing of the independent USP. Sorry, I'm confused. I think it might be USPD is what's supposed to be here. I'm not sure. But I think it might be referring to the Independent Social Democratic Party. Buchanan should the Communist Workers' Party of Germany share the same Congress decisions. Messed up. The outcome of the Congress had justified our tactics. The decisions taken on the questions of concern to us, building of the party, parliamentarianism, trade union politics, reveal the most unconcealed opportunism. They are decisions on the line of the right wing of the Independent Social Democratic Party, decisions that even to the interpretation of the Daumigs, Kurt Geyers, Cohenens, etc., on the parliamentary and trade unions question mean a violation. Buchanan should the Communist Workers' Party of Germany share the same Congress decisions on the same ground with the Independent Social Democratic Party. Footnote. Wilhelm Koenen, who lived from 1886 to 1963, Kurt Geyer, who lived from 1891 to 1967, and Ernst Daumig, who lived from 1868 to 1922, were all former Social Democrats who opposed the war before becoming leading members of the Independent Social Democratic Party, USPD, then the Communist Party of Germany, once it had rejected anti-parliamentarian communist tactics. End footnote. One must answer in the affirmative to this question and think out the consequences in order to judge the complete monstrosity and absolute impossibility of the Communist Workers' Party of Germany joining this Third International. This is not to say that we wish to oppose the organizational unification of communist workers and an international alliance of the revolutionary proletariat. By no means. We only mean that the affiliation to an actual revolutionary international will not be decided through paper Congress decisions and the goodwill of the strata of the hierarchies. It decides itself through the will to struggle and the revolutionary activities of the masses in the hour of the decision. It is the product of the great purifying and maturing processes of the revolution, which eliminates everything halfway and wrong and only lets the true and whole count. The Communist Workers' Party of Germany may confidently look forward to this decision. Then it will rise to the historic task that awaits it. As I said goodbye to Lenin, I said to him, quote, hopefully the next Congress of the Third International can take place in Germany. Then we will have brought you the concrete evidence that we were in the right. Then you will have to correct your point of view, end quote. To which Lenin replied, laughing, quote, if it so happens, then we will be the last to stand in the way of correction, end quote. May it so happen, it will so happen. The end. Thanks for listening.